Okay, so a couple days ago, actually on the morning of tight end U, so I was really busy, my article on 49ers rookies from Florida State dropped. Those two guys are right here. Renardo Green and Tatum Bethune. Two rookies from the same defense. Obviously, they go in the same draft class. Renardo Green, second round pick for the 49ers. Tatum Bethune, seventh round pick for San Francisco. But you also saw that Jared Verse from that same Seminole defense, along with Braden Fisk, were drafted and they went to the Rams. So in the NFC West, we've seen four rookies from the same college defense all drafted here in the same year. So there's something about that Florida State defense over the past couple of years that the NFC West really liked. 49ers and the Rams play, I believe, on September, I think it's late September 29th. I think it's week 3 down at SoFi Stadium. And there should be a lot of Florida State players on the field. Anyway, the link to this article is in the description. We're going to talk about what the 49ers are getting in Renardo Green and Tatum Bethune. Quick summary, they're getting a couple dogs. John Lynch said that Renardo Green called himself a dog about 15 times when Kyle Shanahan and Lynch talked to him following the draft on the phone. And his way of saying that he's an extremely tenacious player. When we talk about tenacity, I did my homework here. I called Mike Norvell, who is Florida State's head coach, and I called Adam Fuller, who's their defensive coordinator, to talk about both of these prospects. And Fuller, his quote on Tatum Bethune is epic. With Tatum, it was me trying to make sure he didn't try to separate the head from another human being every time he tried to tackle somebody. Understand there's a time to pull your trigger and there's a time to just go make a tackle. There were so many good moments with him. Who does this remind you of? Read it one more time. He's trying to make sure he didn't try to separate the head from another human being every time he tried to tackle somebody. Sounds a lot like Dre Greenlaw, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Now, Tatum Bethune went down in the 7th round. So obviously he doesn't have the peak level of measurables. Ran about a 4.7, 4.8 40. 49ers typically like really fast linebackers. The 40 time doesn't suggest that he's particularly fast. It's rather ordinary for the linebacker position. But everyone that you talk to, and also when you watch the tape, I think the first thing that popped up to me about Tatum Bethune when I watched the tape was that he sniffed out screen passes. He played really, really quick. And Mike Norvell confirmed that, yeah, this guy played really quick. Florida State thinks that he was their best practice player over the course of the past couple of years, which is a big, big compliment from any coach. That means that the guy studies. And I think that the study from Tatum Bethune, the fact that he's a student of the game, he understands formations, he understands tendencies, what might be coming at him, that allows him to get a quick first step. You know, Dwayne Aquina used to be the defensive backs coach at Stanford. He'll always tell me that at the safety position, because he coached Earl Thomas, developed Earl Thomas back at Texas. He was a longtime DB coach back at Texas. The safety position, there's many different ways to become a true NFL player. You can have 4.6 speed, but pair that with 4.2 or 4.3 anticipation, and that anticipation comes from the field study and it comes from reflexes, and that'll allow you to be an NFL player. You can have 4.2 or 4.3 speed, but if you have 4.5 or 4.6 reflexes, well, you'll still be an NFL player, but you won't be a great one in all likelihood. But when you have 4.3 speed and 4.3 anticipation, if you could package both together, then you're Earl Thomas and you could be on a yacht a few years into an NFL career because you're going to be making a lot of money. That's what Dwayne Aquina used to always say. Anyway, Tatum Bethune, he's not playing safety. He's playing linebacker. But I think he definitely has top-level instinctive quickness from the linebacker position, even if he doesn't have the measurable quickness. So you saw him sniff out a ton of screen passes at Florida State. He's got the mentality where, yes, you probably do have to restrain him from decapitating somebody when he's playing that position, throw back in that way. The 49ers are very happy to play that balancing act with Dre Greenlaw right now. And, you know, he has the feel. to be a good teammate defensively, which is so important at the linebacker level. Is he the best cover linebacker? No, I don't think so. Does he have the most fluid hips? No, I don't think so. That's the reason why Tatum Bethune went in the 7th round. But if the 49ers are looking for an off-ball linebacker to supplement the core, and they, obviously we're trying to find good value in the 7th round, Tatum Bethune, who is pictured right here on the right, might be their guy. Just a thought. 7th round pick for the 49ers at a position where there's going to be some potential upward mobility, right? Dre Greenlaw is currently hurt. And, we talk about the parallels between Bethune and Greenlaw. One thing that I'll toss out there is that, Greenlaw didn't measure all too quickly in the standard measurements, like speed-wise at the combine, but he was the fastest player on Arkansas's defense by GPS tracker. There's a difference between football speed and the speed that you see on a metric like the 40. Because football speed, there's a certain level of bravado and confidence that is going to go into actually running fast on the football field. And you have to have that moxie and that confidence to move as quickly as possible in such a dangerous environment with pads on. Somebody like Tatum Bethune certainly seems to move in a football sense much more quickly than he does in the 40 sense, which is a good thing. And I think that some of the quotes that we've heard about him make him a solid comp to Dre Greenlaw, who had the fastest GPS tracker time out of an SEC defense playing the linebacker position. I think Dre played safety in high school, was more of a DB. A lot of these 49ers linebackers have DB backgrounds because they like so much speed there. Bethune doesn't, but if he plays quick enough for the 49ers, he has a chance to make this football team. And I think that some of the hair on fire effort that he brings plays could potentially make him a solid special teamer. And that's probably what he's going to need to make the roster. Anyway, let's go to Renardo Green now, though. I think a lot of people are really, really intrigued, probably more intrigued by Renardo Green, 31 on the screen, than they are about Tatum Bethune, because this was the 2nd round pick of the 49ers. And I think, last year they had to play Diamaro Lenore on the inside at that slot cornerback position a whole heck of a lot. That weakened them on the outside. Now they've signed veterans to get stronger on the outside just in case Lenore has to play on the inside. So it's not like Renardo with this skill set right here, the physical skill set. I think that there's some impressive splits in there, especially as far as the explosiveness goes. But you could tell that the size isn't great, which I think makes the 49ers a little bit more intrigued about his fit on the inside, since you typically want a smaller frame on the inside anyway to be able to dart around bigger blockers. You're a little bit more agile with that. But with Renardo, his college career is so interesting because he was so damn good against top flight competition. Have a look at this. Over 60 coverage snaps against the top 3 receivers that he faced last year. 3 first-round picks in the NFL, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Ricky Pearsall, who's with the 49ers. Over 60 coverage snaps against those 3 guys. Green allowed only 5 catches and a 28.7 passer rating into his coverage. 28.7. This is what Mike Norvell, Florida State's head coach, said. We put him in challenging positions. Press man on an island, regardless of the result, if it was a pass breakup or if he gave up a completion, it was the response that really solidified him being a great player. And then here's what Florida State's defensive coordinator, Adam Fuller, said. I don't know if there was a better on-the-ball corner in one-on-one situations in the entire country this year than Renardo. He's such a competitor. He takes a lot of pride in how he plays, in winning his one-on-ones. This year, minus 1 ball that was an over-the-top catch, his make-a play grade was as good as I've ever seen for an entire season. So I mean, I don't know how much much better you can gauge a corner in college than when you're gauging him against first round receivers. And Pearsall was a first rounder. Malik Neighbors was a first rounder. Brian Thomas Jr. was a first rounder. And that's where Renardo Green saw his biggest success. It's not like he was perfect. And I think that that is a selling point as well, because he had 4 pass interference penalties this past year. He doesn't have the very best speed. We could see it here. It's relatively pedestrian, 40-yard dash, 46th percentile. The 40 comes in at 4.5 for Renardo Green. So there were times on the tape when he gets a little bit grabby when he has to recover, and that's where the 4 pass interference penalties came in. Also, you only gave up 1 completion of over 20 yards this past season. One ball went over the top. 1 completion of over 20 yards all year. That is impressive. But anyway, there was some of the grabbiness that led to the 4 pass interference penalties. What Mike Norvell told me is that what impressed him the most about Renardo Green is how he bounced back immediately after those 4 PI penalties. At the NFL level, and at that position in particular, it is about your recovery ability, mentally as much as anything, psychologically. You're going to get beaten NFL. Richard Sherman got beaten. Even Deion Sanders got beaten NFL. The offense knows where they're running. The defensive back doesn't know where he's going. It's set up it's rigged in offense's favor, right? So you have to accept that you're going to get beat. But how much fight do you have? Do you start sulking? Do you get frustrated and start getting over aggressive? Or do you show up and, just get back to work on the next down and start making plays again? That's the question. And not everybody, I would even argue that very few are wired to play cornerback at a great level. Because I say this all the time, everybody in the NFL is fast. Everybody in the NFL is a plus athlete relative to the general population of football players. So it's what's going to separate the good athletes from the other good athletes, and it's mentality. And at the cornerback position, it's resilience. It's the ability to bounce back. Renardo Green is the only player in this 49ers draft class who played his entire college career at one school. In this day and age, everybody seems to transfer because it's totally legal and free. I mean, you don't need to sit out anymore. If you don't like your situation in college, you can go ahead and switch gears and go to another school. And Renardo Green, I think, definitely had the temptation to do that at Florida State. After his freshman year, they moved him to safety, and he was going through a lot of injury issues. I mean, for a lot of cornerbacks, being moved to safety is a little bit of an insult. But Florida State had Asante Samuel Jr., who's now with the Chargers at corner. They didn't have any depth at safety. So they moved Renardo, because he was a really good tackler, more on that in a little bit, to safety. And he was asked the question recently, did he think about transferring over the course of those 2 seasons? And he said he did, but he wanted to remain loyal to what he committed to. That's a big deal to him. So it seems like he's one of the very few players in the entire country, especially one of the very few players who dealt with some lineup issues and some playing time issues over the course of his college career, that hasn't transferred, doesn't have a transfer on his resume before entering the NFL. And I think that loyalty says something about Renardo Green. I think it says something about his fight. Hell, I mean, he even himself talked about his fight right here when Daniel Bullocks called him. This was before the draft. That's the 49ers defensive backs coach. This is Green's quote. One thing he said was that he wouldn't want to fight me. I asked him why, and he said, because I feel like you'll fight until you die. I said, yeah, that's what a dog is. You ever seen a dog fight? So he's seen a lot of things just on paper about me as a person and how I am. You're getting a dog, a tenacious football player, an instinctive, athletic player, and a versatile, smart player. That's Renardo Green. So you've got a fighter. And I think, at that nickelback position, it takes somebody who's willing to scrap at that nickelback position, because you need to have somebody who's the agility to cover these really quick, smaller slot receivers, right? So normally somebody with the agility to do that is not going to have the biggest frame. But then you're going to have pulling guards. You're going to have fullbacks in this day and age. You're going to have tight ends trying to block you in the run game. And I think the 49ers' success offensively has made the run game more popular around the whole league. So if you're a nickelback, you've got to it's tough. You've got to cover, and you've got to be a plus run defender. They're also going to ask you to blitz a lot. And Adam Fuller, the Clemson, or not Clemson, sorry, the defensive coordinator for Florida State, wrong ACC school there. Adam Fuller said that he encouraged Renardo Green to hone his skills as a blitzer over the years. He told him, you are an absolute missile when you blitz. And you have to be coming from the nickelback position because you're lined up closer to the fray. You're lined up closer to where everything is happening. You're closer to that QB, so they're going to ask you to blitz and get on that QB in a hurry. And you better get on that QB in a hurry, because if you're blitzing, you're generally leaving the slot receiver. You're leaving that assignment, and the slot receiver is closer to the quarterback, so it's a quicker throw on a slant that's left open, or any quick route that's left open. So that blitz has to hit. You have to be a missile from that nickelback position. You have to be that plus run defender who can shake off blocks. You're not going to take on a guard one-on-one, mano a mano, head to head. That's never going to work. But you have to be scrappy. You have to be fluid with your body. You work your way around the biggest brunt of contact, but you're still going to be taking a lot more contact and a lot more bruises than an outside corner will. So you do have to have that dog's fight in you. And then, of course, you have to cover. And Renardo Green led the ACC with 14 pass breakups last year. I don't think that's an insignificant stat. Anyway, the 49ers have been working him on the inside and the outside. That was over the course of the spring. I expect that to continue over training camp. And then we're going to see, just based on how he establishes himself, we're going to be able to see where he'll see playing time as a rookie. And I think the 49ers expect him to see playing time as a rookie. But you've got Charvarius Ward on the outside. By the way, yesterday's update, we can take George Kittle off of the injury shading. I think we'll be able to take Charvarius Ward off soon. He had the same surgery as George Kittle. But they signed Isaac Yiadom, who's going to be an outside guy. Really impressive for the Saints last year. I think that gives the 49ers real flexibility. So does Rock Yassin, veteran cornerback. You're going to have a couple veterans ahead of youngsters like Darrell Luter Jr. Obviously, Embry Thomas is still on the team. Samuel Womack is there. Kamon Hall. But you got a couple veterans that really shore up the outside cornerback position opposite Charvarius Ward. And then you have Deommodore Lenoir as your top option to begin at nickel. And you're nickel about 70% of the time. That's what they did last year. They slid Lenoir inside when they needed to because he's got that hyena mentality. He's talked about that. That's his animal of comparison. And then Lenoir can be the outside guy opposite Ward when they're in base. But if Renardo Green can grab the reins at nickel sooner rather than later, that gives the 49ers so much more flexibility on the outside, where they had a weakness last year when Lenoir had to play on the inside. Ward was great. Lenoir was great. Embry Thomas wasn't. And, beyond the top two corners, there were major questions last year. Now, Darrell Luter Jr. has impressed them as well. And this is going to be a second year. He's going to be a lot more healthy. So it's going to be a race to make this roster. And Renardo Green's versatility is what could be his ticket to playing time early on. That versatility, combined with the fact that he had so much success against top flight competition last year. In general, I think that this 49ers draft class is a really high floor. And this is how that works defensively. They drafted 3 defensive players this year. They drafted Renardo Green. They drafted Tatum Bethune, who we talked about. And they drafted Malik Mustafa, the safety out of Wake Forest. There is a commonality between all 3. And it's funny because when I talked to Adam Fuller, the Florida State defensive coordinator, about Green and Bethune, the first thing that popped up when he was talking about memories of them playing in college were separate tackles in separate years that they had in the open field against Jaden Daniels, who's now with Washington, LSU's quarterback. Florida State beat LSU 2 straight years, huge games. Both times, their primary defenders did a good job really stymieing LSU. Heisman candidate, Jaden Daniels, all that good stuff. Bethune had an open field tackle to set the tone against Florida State, against Jaden Daniels, against LSU for Florida State against Jaden Daniels. And then the next year, Renardo Green had an open field tackle. Both really impressive takedowns. Malik Mustafa, meanwhile, the other of the 49ers' 3 defensive draftees, was known for his tackling. He's one of the best tacklers in the nation, college football-wise, coming out of Wake Forest. He's a missile. He's all over the field. He's really versatile. He's this ball and muscle. We've talked about him. So the commonality between all 3 49ers defensive draftees is solid tackling. And if you remember Ambry Thomas coming out of college, they had to add strength to him. Tackling was an issue. Winning at the point of attack was a point of issue. A lot of young corners. Look at how Seattle's guys struggled to take down the 49ers last year, or how embarrassing it was for the Eagles. I mean, they were struggling to tackle everybody. Jawan Jennings was throwing people into the bench, into the Gatorade coolers, and scoring touchdowns. Brock Purdy was running through tackles, not just rookie DBs. I mean, this was all DBs for Philadelphia. In general, DB tackling is a problem across the NFL. The 49ers have made sure that they picked up 3 players on the back end of their defense, the back 7 of their defense, if you count Tatum Bethune, who can really tackle. And that is what has led to the high floor of this 49ers draft class. And when you're a team that is on the doorstep of winning a Super Bowl, when you're trying to preserve the roster yet infuse it with youth, you cannot sit there and inject youth into the roster that is maybe going to give you more energy, but also going to deflate you through the fact that they're just not great football players. They still need a lot more seasoning, especially when it comes to the fundamentals of the game. And many times with rookies, that's a problem. The guys are bigger, faster, stronger. Things are just moving so much more quickly in the NFL. Rookie defenders, it takes a while for them to develop into good tacklers. We saw this with Fred Warner, for example. Took him a couple of years to develop into a truly premium tackler at the NFL level. So the fact that the 3 49ers defensive draftees this year are already established tacklers, some of the best in the country coming out of college last year, that gives them immediate potential playability in this 49ers defense without dropping the floor of it. They've maintained the level of the floor. And I think that's so important. I think that was one of the themes of this year's 49ers draft. So that's the defensive commonality. Maybe there's some commonalities with Dre Greenlaw. Maybe Renardo Green's success against those first-round picks is going to come through big. But if you want to read this full thing, the link is in the description. It's a great time to subscribe to The Athletic, read about a couple dogs, DAWGS, right? Dogs. It's always a debate. How do you spell it when you write it? But I went with the dictionary definition there, or the dictionary spelling, I guess I should say there. Check it out. It's in that description. You will learn a lot about what the 49ers are getting in Renardo Green and Tatum Bethune. I'll answer a couple questions, and then I want to go swimming. It's a beautiful day. I'm flying to San Francisco tomorrow. It'll be a fun couple days out there. It'll be a little bit cooler than it is out here, but I have some business to take care of. And then we will move forward into the hot summer with another fun trip coming up about a week after that. And then, I mean, training camp, we're approaching the month out date. I fly out for training camp on July 22nd. It's coming up soon. Doesn't look like people have many questions. I guess I haven't put out the Q&A announcement. There it is. Post your questions from Mike, who continues to do a good job. Who's going to make the tight end roster? Well, that's a good question, because the other day I wrote this, and 4 of the candidates are right there. This guy right here is going to make it for sure, George Kittle. But you got three other guys: Cam Latu, Braden Willis, Jake Tonjes. So there's 7 tight ends in the room. Eric Saubert, good pro, entering year 8. Mason Pline, he could be a good player. I mean, it's a raw talent, rookie, been playing football since 2023, but what an athlete he is. He was already making contested over the middle catches. He was getting laid out and holding onto the football his first year playing football, coming out from college basketball, 6'7", 6'8". They have size in that tight end room. The fourth guy is Logan Thomas on the right. If you can make George Kittle look short, that's a tall tight end room. They've got real size in that room. Anyway, we'll see what Braden Willis and Cam Latu have in camp. Jake Tonjes is going to have a chance as well. He's gotten a lot stronger. George told me that Jake Tonjes has put on some muscle. He's worked really hard in the weight room. But to answer your question, I don't know. I need to see training camp to judge these kind of things. Will Bethune make the 53? His role on special teams seems to be the way to make the team. Well, we can look here at that linebacker position. I have him on the outside looking in right now, but Jalen Graham, he's going to have to compete. He was last year's 7th round pick. He gets to compete against this year's 7th round pick. I think D. Winters has made a lot of big strides. Fred Warner's excited about that. Ezekiel Turner, that he's also might be taking a spot on this roster. He's a free agent pickup, really good special teams player. And then Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, year after year, he makes the team. So they're obviously really familiar with him on special teams. They like him for that role, but I don't think anybody's job, beyond the core starters is particularly safe. It's a really deep team, and they're looking to get better at every position. So Bethune's going to have to compete, but it seems that he is wired the right way. Will Justin Jefferson's outlier contract significantly raise the price of the franchise tag for receivers next year? It's the mean of the top 5 salaries, the average. So yes, it will raise it. It depends on what you call significant. The fact that there's now 35 million in that calculation instead of the previous high water mark being 31, 32 million is significant. It's not just Jefferson, it's AJ Brown's new contract signed this offseason. Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract signed this offseason. There's big time money that has been agreed to, at least on the APY front, that should bump up the franchise tag. So that's important to note. So that's in that way, any receiver signing a big deal, at least downstream, is going to help other receivers, because the 49ers leverage, and they have the leverage in this situation with Brandon Ayuk, comes from the threat of their exertion of the franchise tag, right? The franchise tag for 2025, coupled with the $14 million that Ayuk is already under contract for here in 2024, that's what the 49ers can theoretically keep Ayuk at, even if they don't execute or reach a deal with him, a long-term deal. So anything that Brandon Ayuk agrees to with the 49ers, anything that he negotiates with the 49ers, the parameters are theoretically constrained by the threat of the franchise tag. But it should be higher next year thanks to all these new contracts, including the one that Justin Jefferson signed, because it's the average of the top 5 deals at the position. I mean, I read these rumors, the separate salary cap for quarterbacks, but I don't know if that would even work given the collective bargaining agreement. I think that they would have to revisit that with a new CBA. I don't think that the players union would go for it. And if, it wouldn't be legally possible to change this, I would think, on the fly. So I read that. Maybe Pro Football Talk had it. It's an interesting thought, but I don't know how realistic it is, at least in the short term. All right, guys, I have to go swim. And 11:11 seems like a good time to finish. So if you want to support, you can go ahead and subscribe. You can also check out the article on Tight End U. It's right there. So you can find the link in the description. The one that's actually linked in the description, though, is not this one. It's this one. What the 49ers are getting in Florida State products, Renardo Green and Tatum Bethune. So check it out. Get ready. Buckle up for the season. This is where you're going to get your best 49ers intel. And hey, subscribe here as well. Subscribe here. Hit that like button. Do what you need to do. We'll talk to you really soon.